The Gala night sabotage. The hidden CEO is the invisible wife. Attention! What is the ultimate betrayal? The one that leaves you breathless with your soul frozen? Imagine this. A powerful husband secretly deletes his wife from the guest list of the most important gala of his career. The night where fortunes and reputations hang in the balance. And he doesn't just delete her, he replaces her with his mistress. He wanted her to be invisible, a boring wife with insignificant hobbies he had long outgrown. He told everyone she was indisposed. He thought he had won. He believed he had orchestrated the masterstroke, the perfect disappearance. But what happens when the indisposed wife he just erased from the map shows up not only at the gala, but as the event's principal sponsor? Before we dive into this whirlwind of ambition and revenge, tell us in the comments, what corner of the world are you reading this story from? We'd love to know. And at the end, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. The air in the exclusive Drake penthouse in Manhattan's Upper East Side was thick, almost museum-like. Stunning, climate-controlled, impeccably decorated with oversized abstract artwork and polished white marble floors that reflected the light of the city. But despite its beauty, it was utterly devoid of life, of warmth. For Harper Vaughn, the silence was the loudest part of her existence. It was a constant hum, a sharp reminder of the chasm that had opened between her and her husband, Gabriel Drake. To all appearances, they were a power couple. Gabriel was a senior partner at the prestigious law firm Sterling. Draper and Pierce, a man whose ambition was as sharp and meticulous as the tailored suits he wore. Harper, to the outside world, was the elegant, modest wife, the perfect hostess, the quiet one. A role she had once played with love, but now wore like a heavy lead cloak. The change had been gradual, a slow erosion over the past few years. Gabriel's successes had inflated his ego until it filled every room, leaving no space for her. He had begun to view her not as a partner, but as an accessory, a beautiful, well-behaved ornament to display at galas and dinners. He had forgotten the woman he married, the brilliant-minded software architect with a fire in her eyes. He had deliberately stopped asking about her work. "It's just some computer thing, isn't it?" he had once said, with a derisive wave of his hand, when a friend asked. "Keeps her busy?" Harper hadn't corrected him. She had let him believe it, allowed him to think her company, Vaughn Innovations, was a small hobby, a passion project she tinkered with from her home office. She never told him when she landed her third round of funding, when her user base passed 10 million, or when Microsoft had attempted to buy her out for a figure that would have made Gabriel's annual salary look like a rounding error. Her silence was her sanctuary, the one part of her life he hadn't managed to taint with his condescension. The beginning of the end came on a crisp Tuesday afternoon. Harper was in her office, a sleek, minimalist space that starkly contrasted the rest of the penthouse, deep in a conference call with her development team in Zurich. They were finalizing the launch of Athena, a revolutionary data encryption software already making waves in the tech industry. "Preliminary reports from the beta testers are flawless," said her chief engineer, Lucas Mercer, his voice buzzing with excitement over the speaker. "Security protocols hold. We threw everything we had at it, and it's an impenetrable fortress." A rare, genuine smile touched Harper's lips. "Excellent work, Lucas. Stick to the timeline. I want to be ready for the Q4 launch." She ended the call with a sense of pride and accomplishment, a warm current in her veins. This was hers. She had built it from the ground up, fueled by endless nights, relentless determination, and an unwavering faith in her vision. The door to her office slid open without a knock. Gabriel was there, holding a thick, cream-colored envelope. He didn't acknowledge her call or the schematics on her screen. His attention was focused solely on the invitation in his hand. "It's here!" he announced, his voice ringing with arrogance. "The invitation for the Starlight Foundation Gala." Harper turned in her chair. The Starlight Foundation was the city's premier children's charity, and its annual gala was the absolute zenith of the Manhattan social calendar. It was a night of immense networking opportunities, where fortunes were donated and careers were forged. For Gabriel, whose firm represented the foundation, it was the most important night of the year. "How lovely, dear," she said, her voice even. He walked into the room, placing the envelope on her desk, but keeping his hand firmly over it. "This year is different. I'm on the host committee. Victoria Hale herself told me my speech this year is crucial to securing the Henderson account." He practically vibrated with nerves and ambition. "Everything has to be perfect." Harper glanced at the invitation. It read, "Mr. Gabriel Drake and guest." Not Mr. and Mrs. Gabriel Drake. A small detail, perhaps a simple oversight by the event organizers, but in the context of their marriage, it felt like a paper cut. Small, yet sharp and stinging. "And guest?" she asked, raising a delicate eyebrow. Gabriel had the decency to look momentarily flustered. "It's a standard format they use, darling. Don't be pedantic. Obviously, you are my guest." He said the word guest as if he were bestowing a great honor, as if she were a stranger he was magnanimously agreeing to escort. He didn't see the flicker of pain in her eyes, or if he did, he chose to ignore it. He was too busy looking at his reflection in the dark glass of her monitor. "I'll need you to wear the sapphire dress," he continued, already planning the night as if it were a military campaign. "The one we bought in Milan. And please have your hair professionally done. No tight buns. Something soft, accessible." "Accessible?" Harper repeated, the word tasting like ash in her mouth. "Yes. And darling," he added, his tone shifting to one of strained patience. "When we are there, perhaps you could socialize less, or at least stick with the other wives. Last year, you wandered into that terribly boring conversation about, what was it? Algorithmic ethics, with that tech billionaire. It was terribly off-putting. People don't want to talk business at these things." The man he referred to, a Silicon Valley titan, had sought her out after hearing whispers about her work. The conversation had led to a lucrative consulting contract for Vaughn Innovations. But Gabriel saw none of that. He only saw his wife failing to play her designated role as a silent, smiling accessory. "I understand," she said, her voice a placid lake over an enraged current. "I'll do my best not to be off-putting." Satisfied, Gabriel finally released the invitation and turned to leave. "Good. This is my night, Harper. Our future at the firm. My path to a named partnership. It all hinges on this. I can't afford any distractions." As the door slid shut, Harper remained staring at the invitation. Mr. Gabriel Drake and guest. A guest in her own life, an accessory to his. The warmth of her successful call with Lucas had vanished, replaced by a familiar, chilling cold. She looked into the monitor's reflection, past Gabriel's fleeting image, and saw herself. She saw the exhaustion in her eyes, but beneath it, a glimmer of the fire he thought he had extinguished. He had called the night his night. He had said he couldn't afford distractions. He has no idea, she thought, a grim sense of resolution beginning to form, how big a distraction I can be. The gilded cage had become a prison, and she was finally ready to find the key. She just didn't realize Gabriel was about to hand it to her himself. Gabriel Drake felt a surge of triumphant power as he walked the hallowed halls of Sterling, Draper and Pierce, located in a majestic building on Park Avenue. The rich mahogany walls, adorned with portraits of severe-faced founders, seemed to approve of him. He was a man on the rise, and the Starlight Gala was going to be his coronation. But a nagging disquiet gnawed at the edges of his confidence. Harper. She was becoming unpredictable. Her stillness, which he once mistook for obedience, now felt like a form of judgment. The way she looked at him across the dinner table, her eyes unreadable, gave him the creeps. He hated not being able to decipher her, that a part of her remained stubbornly her own. And her hobby, Vaughn Innovations, was a constant, low-grade source of irritation. He didn't understand it, so he dismissed it. It was easier than admitting his wife might be brilliant in a field he couldn't grasp. His disquiet crystallized into a plan during a lunch meeting 2 weeks before the gala. The meeting was with Scarlet Lawson. Scarlet was a junior associate at the firm, but she moved with the predatory grace of a panther. She had sharp, intelligent eyes, a biting wit, and an ambition that rivaled Gabriel's. She had ostensibly joined him as his mentee, but the dynamic was far more charged. She flattered his ego, hung on his every word, and made him feel like the industry titan he so desperately wanted to be. She was everything he thought he wanted, ambitious, focused on his world, and completely indifferent to anything outside of it. They were sitting at the Capitol Grill, a steakhouse where deals were closed over $100 sirloins. "Victoria Hale was singing your praises at the partners' meeting this morning," Scarlet said, leaning forward, her voice a soft purr. "She said the Henderson account is practically yours if the gala goes well." "It will," Gabriel said, adjusting his tie. "It just leaves the matter of the guest list." Scarlet took a delicate sip of her wine. "Oh, is there a problem?" Gabriel hesitated, feigning nonchalance. "Harper. She hasn't been herself lately, very wrapped up in her little projects. I worry she'll be a distraction. You know how she can be. Talking about things no one understands. It's not the right image." Scarlet's expression was a masterpiece of calculated sympathy. "It must be so difficult for you, Gabriel, to be on the cusp of something so great and have to worry about your partner reflecting the right image. Image is everything in our world." She paused, letting the implication hang in the air. The invitation said, "and guest," didn't it? That's quite flexible. A dark, treacherous seed of an idea began to sprout in Gabriel's mind. He could simply uninvite her. But the fallout, the questions, the sheer domestic unpleasantness of it was a deterrent. "It would be complicated," he said, testing the waters. Scarlet's smile was sharp. "Complications can be managed. Discretion is a lawyer's best tool, after all." She leaned closer, her expensive, intoxicating scent filling his senses. "Who's the gala coordinator? Melissa from the foundation, isn't it? She's friends with my sister. A single phone call. A plausible reason. A sudden illness, perhaps. An unmissable prior engagement she simply forgot. It would be a shame for her to feel pressured to attend if she wasn't feeling well," Scarlet continued smoothly. "It would be a kindness, really. You'd be saving her a night she clearly wouldn't enjoy." She was a master at redefining betrayal as consideration. She gave him not only a plan, but a justification. He wouldn't be a villain. He would be a thoughtful husband. The idea took root and grew its thorny vines around his ambition. The vision of the gala solidified in his mind. Him on the podium, powerful and eloquent. Scarlet at his table, looking at him with undisguised admiration. And Harper? Harper would be home, out of sight and out of mind. Tending to whatever it was she did. The next day, Gabriel made the call. He waited until Harper had left for a rare meeting outside the office. She hadn't bothered to explain it. He closed the door to his study, his heart pounding in his chest. A strange mix of guilt and exhilarating freedom coursed through him. He dialed the number for the Starlight Foundation events office. "Could I speak to the coordinator?" Gabriel Drake calling. A moment later, The coordinator's cheerful voice answered the line. "Gabriel, so good to hear from you. We're all so excited about the gala. Your support has been incredible." "Of course, happy to help," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "Listen, I'm calling about a small, rather delicate matter regarding the guest list. It seems there's been a slight miscommunication on my part. My wife, Harper, unfortunately, won't be able to attend." "Oh no, is everything all right?" He let out a perfectly crafted sigh. She's been terribly run down lately, overexerting herself with a personal project. I've been urging her to take it easy, and she's finally agreed. She feels dreadful about it, of course, but her health must come first. Send her deepest apologies. "Oh, poor thing." "Of course, we completely understand," the coordinator said, her voice dripping sympathy. "Please send her our best wishes. So the ticket will just be for you then? Or will you be bringing a guest instead?" This was the moment, the final twist of the screw. "Actually, yes," he said, as if the idea had just occurred to him. "One of my junior associates, Scarlet, has been instrumental in preparing the report for the Henderson account. It would be an invaluable experience for her. Would it be possible to switch the name on the place card to hers?" "No problem at all, Gabriel. Consider it done. We'll have a place card for Ms. Scarlet Lawson at your table." "Thank you. You're a lifesaver. I appreciate your discretion." "Of course." He hung up the phone, a wave of relief washing over him. It was done. It had been so easy. He had surgically removed Harper from his big night. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city that felt like it was finally his. He felt no remorse, only a cold, clean sense of efficiency. He had identified a problem, an unpredictable variable, and he had eliminated it. That night, he was unusually charming to Harper. He brought home a bottle of her favorite Chardonnay and never once mentioned the gala. He asked a superficial question about her day, and when she gave a vague answer, he accepted it without pushing. He was playing the part of the loving husband, one last deceptive performance before the curtain rose on his solo act. He watched her across the table, this woman who was now a stranger to him. She was quiet, her thoughts hidden behind a serene facade. He mistook her silence for ignorance. He mistook her composure for passivity. He believed, with the full force of his arrogant heart, that she had no idea what was coming. He was convinced he held all the cards, oblivious to the fact that Harper was not only playing a different game. She owned the entire casino. The weeks leading up to the gala were a masterclass in domestic theater. Gabriel was solicitous as and attentive in a way he hadn't been in years, an act of conjugal bliss designed to mask his betrayal. He spoke of the gala with an air of detached importance, never directly mentioning her attendance. He talked about his speech, the seating plan, the importance of the Henderson account, all while carefully avoiding the one topic that should have been central, what she would do that night. Harper, for her part, played her role with unnerving perfection. She listened patiently, offered vague pleasantries, and never, ever asked the obvious question. What time should we leave? Her silence was a mirror reflecting his deception, but he was too blinded by his own reflection to see it. He believed he was getting away with it. The discovery, when it came, was not a dramatic confrontation. There were no shouts, no tearful accusations. It was silent, digital, and devastatingly precise. Harper was in her office 1 week before the event, preparing for a quarterly board meeting of Vaughn Innovations. Her company had grown far beyond a hobby. It was now a quiet giant in the tech world, with a board of directors composed of some of the sharpest minds in finance and technology. One of them was Chase Donovan, a semi-retired venture capitalist in his late 60s, a man with a legendary reputation for spotting talent and a deep belief in ethical business practices. He had been one of Harper's earliest and most ardent backers. She was reviewing the foundation's public donor information for her own philanthropic planning when she decided to check the Gala website. They often posted a list of the host committee and key attendees to generate buzz. She navigated to the page, a knot of cold dread tightening in her stomach. And there it was, under the host committee, Table 1 heading, printed in elegant digital script. Mr. Gabriel Drake, Sterling, Draper, and Pierce. Mr. and Mrs., other host names. Mr. the Billionaire, CEO, Henderson Corp., and Ms. Scarlet Lawson. Sterling, Draper, and Pierce. Harper stared at the screen, her breath caught in her throat. Ms. Scarlet Lawson. The name was like a physical blow. It wasn't just that her own name was missing. It was the name that had replaced it. Scarlet, the sharp, ambitious associate Gabriel had been mentoring. The woman whose expensive perfume sometimes lingered on his suits. The betrayal was so cold, so clinical, it nearly took her breath away. He hadn't just excluded her. He had replaced her. He had traded her in for a newer, more convenient model, an accessory that better matched his ambitions. The lie about her indisposition, which she now knew he must have told, was the most insulting part. He had painted her as weak and ill to serve his own purpose. For a long moment she sat there, the hum of her servers the only sound in the room. There was a surge of white-hot anger, a primal urge to storm into his study and throw the laptop at his head. She wanted to scream, demand an explanation, watch him squirm under the weight of his deceit. But then another feeling, colder and far more powerful, washed over her. It wasn't just an insult. It was a declaration. He had declared her worthless to him. He had declared their marriage a sham. He had declared her an obstacle to be eliminated. And in his declaration, he had given her a gift. Freedom. Freedom from pretense. Freedom from trying to save something already dead. Freedom to be exactly who she was, unapologetically. She did not confront him. To do so would be to play his game, to descend into a messy, emotional battle that he would twist and manipulate. He would call her hysterical, paranoid. He would make her doubt herself, making her believe she was overreacting. No, this required a silent execution. Her fingers, steady and deliberate, moved from the mouse to the phone. She did not call Gabriel. She did not call a divorce lawyer. Not yet. She called Lucas Mercer, her brilliant chief engineer and trusted right-hand man. "Lucas," she said, her voice devoid of emotion, "cancel my appointments for the rest of the week. Tell Chase Donovan it's about the Starlight Foundation." There was a pause on the other end. Lucas was shrewd. He knew her tone. This was not a business call. This was something else. "Right away, Harper," he said. No questions asked. As she waited for the call to connect, Harper opened a new file on her computer. It was a secure, cryptid document. The title she typed was simple: Exit Strategy. A few minutes later, her private line buzzed. "Harper, dear." Chase Donovan's warm, grave voice filled the room. "Lucas said it was urgent. Everything all right with the Athena launch?" "The launch is perfect, Chase," Harper said, a new and steely resolve hardening her voice. "Everything is on schedule. In fact, I'm thinking of moving up the timeline for our new philanthropic division." Donovan sounded intrigued. "I thought that was a year out." "Plans change," Harper said, her eyes returning to the guest list on her screen. "I've just been made aware of a charity that I believe aligns perfectly with Vaughn Innovation's values, the Starlight Foundation." "An excellent organization," Donovan agreed. "Blue chip, a little stuffy for my taste, but they do good work with the children." "Indeed," Harper said. "Their annual gala is next week. I understand they are still looking for a primary sponsor for the event. The star sponsor, I believe they call it. The one with maximum visibility. Donovan remained silent for a moment, the gears turning in his astute mind. He knew Harper. He knew her methodical nature. This was not a whim. It's a 7-figure commitment, Harper, and highly public. I am aware of the cost, she replied, her voice unwavering. And visibility is precisely the goal. Chase, I need you to make a call. I want Vaughn Innovations to be the sole principal sponsor of the Starlight Foundation Gala. I want our name on everything. The banners, the program, the stage, and I want it done by close of business tomorrow. Can you make that happen? There was another pause, a longer one. Chase Donovan did not get where he was by being slow on the uptake. He could feel the undercurrents, the unsaid story behind this sudden, massive commitment. He didn't need to know the details. He only needed to know that his faith in her was well placed. Consider it done, he finally said, a hint of admiration in his voice. They'll fall over themselves for it. The publicity for us will be immense. The publicity is secondary, Harper said quietly, her gaze fixed on Scarlet Lawson's name. This is about sending a message, a clear, unequivocal message. She ended the call and leaned back in her chair. The anger had subsided, replaced by an icy calm. Gabriel thought he was closing a door on her. He had no idea she was about to buy the entire building and evict him. The game had changed. He had made his move, and now she was about to make hers. And it would not be quiet. The week that followed was a marvel of quiet, furious activity. For Gabriel, it was a week of blissful ignorance. He was consumed with polishing his speech, coordinating key talking points with Scarlet, and reveling in the anticipated glory of his impending triumph. He viewed Harper's quiet demeanor as submission, her long hours in her office as her retreat into her irrelevant world. He felt smug, secure, and completely in control. For Harper, it was a week of strategic warfare, waged not with shouts and tears, but with emails, conference calls, and the quiet, immense power of her wealth. She was not a scorned woman. She was a CEO executing a hostile takeover of her own narrative. Her first move, after securing the main sponsorship through Chase Donovan, was to call the Starlight Foundation coordinator. She did not mention Gabriel. She introduced herself as the CEO of Vaughn Innovations, the Gala's new star sponsor. Ms. Vaughn, this is, the astonished, euphoric coordinator said. I'm speechless. Your generosity is simply overwhelming. Mr. Donovan explained that you wished for us to proceed with maximum discretion until the night of the gala. That is correct, Harper said, her voice cool and professional. My company values privacy. We prefer our work to speak for itself. However, I will be attending. I will, of course, require a seat. Of course, absolutely. We have you at the head table. Naturally. The coordinator shuffled her seating plan. Oh, it appears there's a slight issue. Table 1 is the host committee table, headlined by Gabriel Drake of Sterling, Draper & Pierce. He has a full guest list. Harper let the silence sit for a beat. I am sure Mir Drake, whose firm does so much work for the foundation, will be more than happy to accommodate the event's principal sponsor. Please add a seat for me at that table. I'm sure you can manage it. Her tone was polite, but left no room for negotiation. Yes, of course, Ms. Vaughn. Right away. One more thing, Harper added. Under no circumstances are you to inform Mr. Drake of this change, nor of my company's sponsorship. Let's keep it under wraps until the night. A little drama for the big reveal, don't you think? Imagining the moment a mysterious benefactor would be unveiled, the coordinator gleefully agreed. A marvelous idea, Ms. Vaughn. It will be the talk of the city. Next, Harper focused on her appearance. Gabriel wanted her to be soft and accessible. He had requested the Milan sapphire dress. Harper sold the dress online that same afternoon. Then she called a private couture house, a woman known for creating gowns that were less garments and more works of art. Armor for the modern woman. "I need something for a gala," Harper explained during a video call. The designer's sleek Parisian studio was in the background. "The theme is Starlight. I am not a guest. I am the main event. I want to look like I own the stars, not just admire them." The designer's eyes lit up with creative fire. They settled on a midnight black silk design, custom woven with fine, platinum-like threads that would catch the light like a constellation. It would be sleeveless, with a sharp, architectural neckline that conveyed power, not docility. It was a dress that demanded attention, a dress that did not ask permission. To accompany it, she commissioned a striking necklace and earrings, not of soft diamonds, but of raw, uncut sapphires set in modern, jagged platinum. Beautiful, but with a hint of danger. While her public armor was being forged, Harper worked on her business. She called a special meeting with her PR marketing team. "Project Athena launches in Q4, she told them, her voice ringing with authority. "But I want the pre-launch buzz to begin next week, specifically on the night of the Starlight Gala. I want a coordinated press release sent to all major tech and business journals precisely at 9 p.m. that night. The release will announce Vaughn Innovations as the star sponsor, and also announce Athena's revolutionary capabilities. I want our stock price to be the second biggest story of the night." Her team, sensing the shift in their normally reserved CEO, rushed to comply, a current of excitement coursing through them. Finally, she prepared herself. This was not just about humiliating Gabriel. That was a byproduct, satisfying, but not the final goal. The goal was her liberation. It was about drawing a line in the sand so deep and clear that he could never cross it again. It was about reclaiming her identity, not as Mrs. Gabriel Drake, but as Harper Vaughn, founder and CEO of a company she had built from nothing. The night of the gala, the penthouse was calm and silent. Gabriel was in their master suite, whistling as he put on his tuxedo. He felt like a king surveying his domain. He had planned his moves perfectly. Harper was in the guest wing, an area of the apartment he hadn't entered in months. Her gown was laid out on the bed, the dark fabric seeming to absorb the room's light. Her jewels sparkled on the nightstand like captured starlight. Lucas had arranged a private car to pick her up. She would arrive not with the throng of guests, but at the precise moment of the sponsor reveal. At 7 o'clock, Gabriel knocked on her bedroom door, where he assumed she was. "Harper, I'm leaving now. Scarlet is waiting for me there." From the far end of the long hallway, behind the closed door of the guest suite, Harper heard him. She was standing before a full-length mirror, a vision of midnight and power. She said nothing. Her silence was her answer. Gabriel waited one moment longer, then shrugged, a cruel smirk dancing on his lips. "All right then, have a quiet night in," he said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. He turned and walked out the door, jingling his car keys, leaving his quiet, modest wife behind. He felt a pang of something, but crushed it. It was the price of ambition, he told himself. Harper watched from her window as his car pulled away from the curb, a sleek silver bullet disappearing into the city's bright chaos. She took a deep, steady breath. She wasn't being left behind. She was being freed. The architect had drawn the blueprints. The trap was set. Now, all she had to do was make her entrance. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel, in the heart of Manhattan's financial district, was a symphony of opulence. Crystal chandeliers, each the size of a small car, cast a dazzling fractured light over a sea of tuxedos and designer gowns. The air buzzed with the clinking of champagne glasses, hushed gossip, and the powerful, confident laughter of the New York elite. Gabriel Drake moved through the crowd like a conquering hero, the stunning Scarlet Lawson on his arm. He felt invincible. Her dress was a vibrant crimson, a marked and deliberate contrast to the soft look he had demanded of Harper. It was a statement, and her presence signaled his new direction. "You really outdid yourself, Gabriel," said Victoria Hale, the firm's senior partner, patting his back. "A full table. Henderson is here. The night is already a success." "We aim to please, Victoria," Gabriel replied smoothly, squeezing Scarlet's hand. "We're just getting started." He sat down at the head table, right in the center, a king presiding over court. He scanned the room, a deep sense of satisfaction settling in his chest. Everything was perfect. Every person was in their place. Across the table, the billionaire CEO whose account he was courting gave him a cordial nod. Scarlet whispered something amusing to another partner's wife. There was no sign of Harper, no awkward questions, no prying glances. He had achieved a clean cut. The night unfolded exactly as he had envisioned. Dinner was exquisite. The wine flowed freely, and the preliminary speeches were brief and witty. Gabriel felt the warm glow of success and several glasses of champagne. He leaned into Scarlet, his voice a low murmur. "See? What did I tell you?" "Impeccable," she whispered, her eyes shining. "No distractions, just you." Finally, the moment arrived. The lights dimmed slightly, and the president of the Starlight Foundation took the stage. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome," he began, his voice resonating through the ballroom. "On behalf of the children, we thank you for your incredible generosity tonight. We have raised a record amount, and it is thanks to every single one of you." A round of polite applause swept the room. "But every year," the president continued, his tone turning more dramatic, "there is one donor whose contribution transcends generosity, a partner who becomes the very bedrock of this event, our star sponsor." Gabriel straightened, a self-satisfied smirk on his face. He knew who the habitual corporate sponsors were. It would be a bank or a major corporation. He was ready to lead the applause for the faceless entity that had paid for the night. "This year, we were approached by a new partner," the president announced, genuine excitement in his voice. "A true visionary, a quiet force in an industry that is all noise. A leader who built an empire not on who they know, but on what they can create." A murmur went through the crowd. This was not the usual script. Gabriel glanced at Scarlet, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. Scarlet shrugged, equally perplexed. "This company and its founder represent the future," the president boomed. "They represent innovation, integrity, and the brilliant, unstoppable power of a single revolutionary idea. Their work in data encryption is changing the world, securing a safer future for the very children we seek to protect." Gabriel felt a strange, cold shiver run down his neck. Data encryption, revolutionary idea. The words sounded vaguely, horribly familiar. He looked around the room, expecting to see some known tech CEO step forward. "It is my deep honor," the president declared, his voice reaching a crescendo, "to announce this year's star sponsor, a company that has truly illuminated our night, Vaughn Innovations." The name hit Gabriel like a physical force. Vaughn Innovations, Harper's hobby, her little project. He felt the blood drain from his face. It couldn't be. It was a coincidence. Some other Vaughn. But the president wasn't finished. "And please, everyone, on your feet, as we welcome the architect of this incredible generosity, the founder and CEO of Vaughn Innovations, Ms. Harper Vaughn." As he spoke the name, the great double doors at the end of the ballroom flew open, and she was there. For a moment, there was total silence, a collective gasp from 300 of the city's most powerful people. Harper stood poised in the doorway, a breathtaking figure of power and control. Her midnight silk gown drank the light, the platinum threads shimmering like a distant galaxy. The raw sapphires at her throat were not delicate jewels. They were shards of the night sky, bold and defiant. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek, severe style that highlighted the sharp line of her jaw. She was not soft. She was not accessible. She was magnificent. Then the reaction began. It started in the front row with Chase Donovan, who was already standing, a proud smile on his face. Then others, recognizing the name from emerging tech articles, or simply stunned by the pure drama of the moment, rose to their feet. The applause started scattered at first, then built into a deafening, rolling wave of sound. One by one, table by table, the entire room stood. They were not just applauding a donor, they were witnessing an arrival. Gabriel remained frozen in his chair, a statue of pure shock. His champagne glass was still in his hand. He stared, his mind unable to process what his eyes were seeing. This was not his wife. This was not the quiet, modest woman he had left at home. This was a supernova, a celestial event dressed in midnight silk and captured starlight. Scarlet Lawson was equally stunned, her face a mask of disbelief and dawning horror. Her crimson dress, which moments before seemed so bold and vibrant, now looked gaudy and cheap next to Harper's celestial elegance. She looked from Harper to Gabriel and saw the color drain completely from his face. She had hitched her wagon to a falling star. Harper's eyes scanned the standing crowd, her expression calm and regal. She gave a small, dignified nod of thanks, and then her gaze moved deliberately, slowly, across the room until it landed on table 1. It slid past the stunned faces of partners and patrons, and finally settled on Gabriel. She did not smile. She did not glare. Her look was one of cold, detached evaluation. It was the look a CEO reserves for a redundant employee, a look that said, "You are irrelevant." As the applause thundered around them, Harper began to walk. She did not rush. Her steps were measured, her posture perfect. She moved through the standing crowd, which parted for her as if by royal decree. Her destination was clear: the empty seat at the head table, the seat the coordinator had, as instructed, squeezed between Victoria Hale and Gabriel. The seat that now undeniably belonged to her. The sound hit Gabriel first. It wasn't just applause, it was a physical force, a concussive wave of sound that seemed to push him down into his velvet-covered chair. 300 of the city's most influential figures were standing. Their faces were turned towards the double doors at the back of the ballroom. Towards her. His mind stuttered, refusing to assemble the pieces into the terrifying image his eyes were showing him. As she began to walk, Gabriel felt a primal urge to hide, to shrink beneath the table. Every step she took toward him was a drumbeat, marking the seconds of his own execution. The faces she passed, people he had spent years trying to impress, turned to her with awe, their expressions a mix of shock and profound admiration. They were a jury, and with every clap, they were delivering their verdict. He was frozen in a nightmare of his own making, the lone, seated fool in a sea of standing admirers, next to a woman in a garish crimson dress, who now looked as lost and terrified as he did. For Harper, the applause was distant noise, background music for the single, clear purpose driving her forward. She had spent years navigating rooms like this as a shadow, her presence acknowledged only through her husband. Tonight, she was not an accessory. She was the focal point. She saw faces she recognized, rival CEOs, bank scions, society doyens, their mouths slightly agape. In their eyes, she saw her own reflection, not as Mrs. Drake, but as the powerful, enigmatic Ms. Vaughn, the identity she had forged in silence, now revealed in a symphony of acclamation. Her deliberate, quiet stride brought her to table 1. The air here was thick with unspoken shock. A waiter, his professionalism a small island of calm in the chaos, smoothly pulled out the chair that had been squeezed between Victoria Hale and Gabriel. It was a throne, disguised as a seat. Victoria Hale, a woman whose face was usually an inscrutable mask, recovered first. The flash of anger in her eyes at being so utterly blindsided was quickly replaced by the shrewd calculation of a master strategist. She saw the new chessboard laid out before her. "Harper!" she thundered, her voice a theatrical performance of delight as she seized Harper's hand. Her grip was firm, respectful. "My dear, we are speechless, utterly speechless. Your generosity, your vision, it is a profound honor to have you with us." She was not just being polite. She was publicly aligning herself with the new center of power. Harper tilted her head, accepting the tribute. "Victoria, lovely to see you in such fine form." Her calm reply was a master stroke, establishing that she was not overwhelmed, but completely at ease. She then turned to the billionaire CEO, whose account Gabriel had desperately sought to win. A gruff, self-made man with no patience for pretense, he was already standing, his smile wide and genuine. He admired strength, and he was looking at its personification. "Ms. Vaughn," he said, ignoring the others to shake her hand. "The honor is all mine. I just read a preliminary brief on the ethical data cipher last month. I had no idea the mind behind it was right here in our city. Gabriel, you old dog. You never mentioned your wife was a titan." The comment was ostensibly a compliment to Gabriel, but the undertone was sharp, questioning. Gabriel felt a wave of heat crawl up his neck. He saw a lifeline and grasped it with clumsy desperation. He pushed himself to his feet, trying to arrange his face into a mask of proud, surprised joy. "Darling!" he exclaimed, his voice a forced, unnatural imitation of delight. "What a surprise! You should have told me you were planning something so spectacular. I was so worried when you said you weren't feeling well." He reached out for her arm, attempting to reclaim his role as husband, the one privy to the secret. Harper moved her arm just slightly, an almost imperceptible motion, but enough so that his hand grasped only air. She looked at him, truly looked at him, and her gaze was cold and clear as Arctic ice. "I wasn't well," she repeated, her voice dangerously soft, yet it cut through the persistent hum at the table. "No, Gabrielle, I think the word you're looking for is underestimated, but I have never felt better." The public refusal, the silent correction of his lie, landed like a perfectly thrown dagger. Gabriel winced, his pathetic smile dissolving, the blood draining from his face, leaving behind a waxy, pale sheen. Having dismissed him, Harper's gaze slid past him and settled, for the first time, on Scarlet Lawson. Scarlet, who had remained frozen in a state of horrified paralysis, visibly shrank under the cold, critical scrutiny. It was not a look of anger or jealousy. It was a look of complete indifference, the kind you reserve for a piece of lint on an otherwise perfect garment. Harper did not raise her voice. She didn't need to. She made an almost imperceptible gesture to a passing head waiter. "Excuse me," she said, her tone one of polite concern. "I believe there has been a seating error. This young lady appears to have wandered away from the junior associate section over there." She vaguely gestured toward the back of the ballroom. "Perhaps you could help her find her correct table." The humiliation was absolute, a masterpiece of public execution. She hadn't called Scarlet a homewrecker or an intriguer. She had done something far worse. She had rendered her completely and utterly insignificant, a lost intern, a non-entity. Scarlet's face, already flushed, turned a blotchy, fiery red. Her eyes darted toward Gabriel, pleading with him to say something, to defend her, to do anything. But Gabriel was a hollowed-out man, unable to defend himself, let alone her. He merely stared at his plate, his world collapsing inward. With a muffled sob, Scarlet grabbed her ridiculously small and expensive clutch, her hands shaking. She shoved her chair back with such violence it almost toppled over. Without a single word, she turned and fled, weaving her way between the tables in a walk of pure shame. The whispers and pointed glances of the city's elite followed her like vultures. Gabriel watched her go, another pillar of his fantasy world turning to sand. And at that precise moment, as if orchestrated by a vengeful god of timing, a new sound filled the room. It started as a few isolated vibrations, then spread, a digital wave washing over the ballroom. It was the synchronized buzzing and chiming of hundreds of smartphones receiving a notification. At precisely 9 p.m., Harper's pre-scheduled press release had been published. Victoria Hale, ever the professional, discreetly pulled out her phone from her pocket. Her eyes scanned the screen, and her jaw tightened. She read the Wall Street Journal headline. Secret CEO of Vaughn Innovations, Harper Vaughn, revealed in seven-figure philanthropic coup, announces revolutionary Athena cipher suite. The story was not just about the Gala. It was about a massive corporate move, a disruptor in the tech world. Victoria looked at the stock futures for Vaughn Innovations, which were already climbing in after-hours trading. She looked at Harper, who was calmly sipping her water, a portrait of serene control. And then she looked at the pathetic, sweating man next to her, her partner, who had not only hidden this immense asset from the firm, but had actively sought to discard her in favor of a junior associate on the most important night of the year. The sheer, monumental stupidity of it was breathtaking. Victoria leaned in toward Gabriel, her voice no longer thundering, but a low, lethal hiss, far more terrifying. "Gabriel, my office, tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock sharp." She paused, letting the dread build. "Don't bother bringing a brief. Just bring your resignation." Before Gabriel could process the words that had just ended his career, the president was back on the podium, his face beaming. "And now," he announced gleefully, "we would like to invite our star sponsor, the brilliant Ms. Harper Vaughn, to say a few words." The spotlight swung again, illuminating Harper as she rose. The applause was even louder this time, deafening and prolonged. She passed her husband without a glance, her gown shimmering as she ascended the few steps to the stage. She was no longer just a donor. She was a visionary, a leader, the undisputed star of the night. She reached the podium, and the room fell silent. She looked out over the sea of faces, her gaze level and confident. "Good evening," she began, her voice steady and resonant. "They say starlight is a message from the past, a glimmer of something that burned brightly for millions of years, even though we are just noticing its light. In my world, in technology, we don't look at the past. We build the future. We build foundations that are strong enough to hold the grandest structures. We create fortresses to protect what is most precious." She paused, her eyes scanning the room before briefly, meaningfully, resting on the wreck at table 1. Sometimes the most revolutionary potential lies hidden, overlooked, or simply underestimated. But true value, like a star, cannot be hidden forever. Eventually, its light reaches you. My company, Vaughn Innovations, is honored to support the Starlight Foundation, which does the vital work of ensuring the potential within every child is seen, nurtured, and given the chance to shine. Thank you. It was brief. It was elegant. And, for Gabriel, every word was a perfectly aimed shot. She had spoken of building fortresses, of hidden value, of the folly of neglecting true potential. She had delivered his eulogy without ever speaking his name. The standing ovation that followed was explosive. Gabriel remained seated, a ghost at the feast. The whispers and pointed glances were now unbearable. He couldn't breathe. He pushed himself to his feet, his movements clumsy and uncoordinated. He turned his back on the stage, where his wife was being celebrated, and began his walk of shame. No one tried to stop him. No one seemed to notice him at all. He stumbled out of the grand ballroom, the golden light and the sound of her triumph spilling out behind him, before the heavy doors closed, plunging him into the quiet, indifferent corridor. He was alone. The silence that greeted him was 1,000 times louder than the applause. He had wanted to erase her, but in the end, he had only managed to erase himself. Gabriel thought he was playing chess, but Harper owned the entire chessboard. Interaction and calls. What an ending! Harper's quiet, powerful move is the ultimate lesson. The best response to being silenced is to become the one holding the microphone. If you enjoyed this story of icy justice set in glittering Manhattan, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Share this story with a friend who needs a reminder not to underestimate anyone. And subscribe for more stories where the underestimated always have the last laugh. And now I must ask, what do you think Victoria Hale truly said to Gabriel in that 7 a.m. meeting? Leave your best theories in the comments below. P.S. Did you enjoy the Manhattan setting? What other major international city would you like us to use for the next corporate revenge story? Tell me below. Thank you for reading, and until next time.